Look, I've got an apron. This is pretty official. Hello and welcome to Elliot's cooking show. I'm going to be making some apple crumble muffins. Here's some I made earlier. I have only done these a couple of times and they've turned out pretty fine. They've turned out fine. You know, they're edible. They're pretty damn edible. I've got a bunch of ingredients and utensils and tools here. So like all good cooking shows, I'm now going to get my iPhone out. Okay, so welcome to Nigella's POV. So you're going to need some scales. You're going to need a bowl or two. This is a bigger bowl. You're going to need two sort of bigger bowls. I've got an electric whisk. I think it's whisk. Some apples, some baking powder, that is important. Some cinnamon, very important. In fact, to be honest with you, all of the things here are fairly important. Some sugar, some plain flour, some eggs. Get a bit of brown sugar as well. Some muffin cases, and obviously you need your muffin tray. Some salt, some vanilla extract, some vegetable oil, and a little measuring jug. And then you're gonna need a hand whisk, a serving kind of spoon thing, a knife, a peeler, the things for the whisk, and then a sort of a spatula or a bigger spoon, and a chopping board. And that is everything. I will leave the ingredients in the description so you can check them out if you actually want to go ahead and make this yourself. Right, well, let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is add all of the wet ingredients into a bowl. So, let me take an egg. This is the secret ingredient right here. Let's, I don't know what the American measurement equivalent is, but for England, it's 1 egg. I realise this is going to be excruciatingly painful for anybody who actually knows how to bake. So 1 egg in a bowl like that. Right, milk and oil. In goes the milk. In goes the milk. In goes the vegetable oil. About that much. That's a bit too much. Not all of it. It's all gone in. It's too late. There's no going back. Right, now we need vanilla extract, and you need 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. This straight up looks like a potion out of Shrek, you know, the love potion. It is the love potion in terms of flavour, because without this, it's not going to taste anywhere near as good. So make sure you put this in. Bang. And now you're going to take your electric mixer and put in the little whiskey things. And go ahead and give it a good whisk. Right. This isn't actually long enough. You do this for about a minute, really, but until it's all just the same colour and a little bit bubbly. When I say bubbly, I don't mean like carbonated, I mean like frothy. Et voila! Wet mix is done. Right, so if you're actually making this yourself using the ingredients in the description, now we're going to add all of the dry ingredients. So you need to add in the flour, the baking powder, the sugar, and the salt. So let's do that. I find baking incredibly therapeutic, relaxing. It's a nice little bit of escapism, and it's also really rewarding. Like you go from having nothing to something, and that's kind of cool. 160 grams of flour. Now we're going to add some salt. You need 1/4 teaspoon of salt. That'll do. Now for the healthy bit, the sugar. Quite a lot of sugar. There's 150 grams of sugar. In goes the sugar. Okay, now for the baking powder, we need 2 teaspoons of this. Without this, your muffins will not rise. And I don't know what the difference is between bicarbonate of soda and baking powder, but just make sure you get baking powder. 2 teaspoons. I sort of do like relatively heaped teaspoons, like not too heaped, but like pretty heaped. Because I don't know if there's just a bit of fluffiness to baking powder, but it seems like it's really light and fluffy. So that's what I do. Now, one thing that I also like to do, but isn't included on the recipe that I follow, is add some cinnamon into the actual like sponge. They say to just put the cinnamon on the crumble on the top, but I add a little bit less than that, like just around about a teaspoon of cinnamon, just because I like the sponge being really cinnamony. Now I'm just going to use my whisk to mix everything. Don't use the electric one because that would be crazy, but yeah, just give it a good little whisk. Next up, give the apples a little wash and then just juggle them to shake the water all over your kitchen. I have no idea if this video is even going to be remotely watchable. I don't know if it's going to work or if it's anything that anybody's interested in, but we'll just give it a go. Okay, so chop the apples up. Wait, do the peeling first. Peel the apples. Now, I kind of feel bad peeling apples because the skin, perfectly edible, but without the rest of the apple, it kind of just feels like, doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel right at all. Right, all the apples are peeled, so the next thing to do is chop them up. The way I sort of do it is cut the big pieces off. You know, you can cut pretty close to the center, to the core. When you get to the point where the seeds stick out, there's a risk that you might have like a chewy bit in there. Yeah, this is a nice soft apple. I think this is gonna be lovely. Okay, so, and then you just chop the rest off. So you have like these two big halves and then these two little ones. And then you just kind of like dice it up. I wouldn't make them too small. That's a good little chunk right there, a good little chunk. So just do that for the whole apple now. So now I've got all of my chopped apple. What you're gonna do is add that into the bowl of the flour and the sugar, all of the dry ingredients. Just chuck it all in there. And then just take your spatula and just sort of like cover all of the apple chunks in the flour. Because the apple's moist, the flour will sort of stick to it and it will cover them all up so they look kind of like dusty chunks of like little rectangles and stuff. That is exactly what you want. Okay, and then we can move all of this out of the way. Oh, don't knock that over, that would be catastrophic. And then we can add the wet mix into the dry mix like this. Oh, not quite like that. Okay, there we go. And then stir it all in. Now with this, you don't want to use a whisk. I know that might look like it's going to speed the process up or something, but it's really important that you don't do that. Obviously there's chunks of apple in here, but it's also important that you don't do that at this stage when making muffins in general, because you don't want the mixture to be too perfectly mixed. Otherwise the muffins become quite dense, like quite sort of stodgy. At this point you want to preheat your oven to 175 degrees centigrade or 350 Fahrenheit. Righty, okay. So to make the crumble, we're going to put in 65 grams of flour. 65 grams of flour, and then you need 100 grams of brown sugar. But I actually don't have the right brown sugar. I have golden granulated, so I'm going to use about sort of 50 grams of this and then 50 grams of caster sugar, and that should be fine. There we go. So now you've got a nice little mix. Chuck that in. Okay. And then the next thing we're going to need is 60 grams of butter. Now it says the butter needs to be cold, but this has been in the fridge, so that's going to be freezing. So I'm going to just chuck this in the microwave for a couple of seconds, but you need 60 grams of butter. Oh, and also this is unsalted butter, just FYI, unsalted butter. There we go, that's perfectly 60 grams. So there we go, 60 grams of butter in the microwave. Yes, perfect. Okay, in with the butter. And then you need some more cinnamon. So another sort of teaspoon of cinnamon. 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. In it goes, and then you're gonna get your hands dirty. There's a bit of a knack to this, and I don't think that I've got it. But basically what I kind of do is I form everything into tiny little pieces. I sort of break it all up into tiny little chunks so that the butter is just gonna become smaller and smaller and smaller. And as the flour and all of the dry ingredients like combine onto the butter, that's gonna sort of stop the butter sticking together, and then you're gonna start getting like little chunks. And then what I like to do is start squeezing everything together into one big kind of ball, because at that point, that's when it starts breaking up and becoming the perfect crumble consistency. Can you see how like it becomes one big lump, and then when you break that up, it becomes the crumble. Ah. And now it's time to assemble the masterpieces. Okay, so now you're gonna put all of your muffin cases in your muffin tray. Once they're all lined, we can start pouring the mixture in. Make sure they're about 3/4 the way full. This just ran out of storage, so that's why the audio now sounds terrible. The last thing to do is just put the crumble on each muffin. So you can kind of just like cover each one evenly. Middle shelf. Okay, I think they are ready now. Let's have a little look. Oh boy, they look goddamn good. Okay, take a skewer, and best way to check that they're ready is just sort of prod into the center and pull it out. And as long as the end of the skewer isn't wet, they are pretty much done. A batch of the finest muffins. These have turned out absolutely perfectly. Just look at that. How well does that even show? Oh yes. Can you see that little profile shot of the inside of the sponge? You see the soft apple chunks, but then the perfectly spongy sponge. I had to whip out the phone again to show you. Can you see the soft sponge, but then the chunks of soft apple, soft and warm as well if you have it the moment it comes out of the oven. Oh my goodness me. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Sip of coffee just to have a bitter taste in my mouth, ready for the sweetness. Oh my Lord. Oh man. That is just too good. That is far too good. Concerningly good. Right. Hey Nana, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good.
I was just wondering if you might be able to tell me what you think of how the muffins look. I know you can't taste them, but here they are. They're apple crumble muffins.
Oh, look very tasty.
Do you think they look good? Can I cut into one and just show you how they look inside, and you can tell me what you think of the consistency and stuff. So they've got obviously little chunks of apple in the middle.
Nice.
Do you think that looks good? And they're nice and soft, and the sponge is like nice and springy, you know?
Lovely.
Yeah.
And imagine that with a nice lot of custard poured over it.
Oh, the custard would be good. That's a good shout. Well, are you proud of me?
Absolutely very proud of you.
Okay. Well, how are you? How are you?